Have a little one's birthday coming up? Fat Brain Toys has unique, age-appropriate gifts that really stand out. For over 21 years, this family-run business from Omaha, Nebraska has been creating toys that entertain and educate. They offer child-driven play experiences that keep both the mind and the body active, with options to shop by age or to use their gift bot for recommendations. Like the Plip Kit, perfect for the young builder, architect, or maker who can use the flexible pieces to create cool patterns and designs. Or my personal favorite, Mr. Bendy, a bendable figure with posable arms, legs, eyes, and wax bendy sticks that offer a fun way for kids to explore social and emotional learning. These durable, screen-free toys promote open-ended play, perfect for creative, differently wired kids. I also love the story of how Fat Brain Toys started. Mark Carson built the company after his 10-year-old son Adam couldn't find magnetic building toys online, and the rest, as they say, is history. Today, their website even features a resource center to help parents of neurodivergent and disabled kids find the best toys for their needs. Go to www.fatbraintoys.com/tilt to get 10% off all the items in the Tilt collection when you use the code TILT at checkout. And find out for yourself why Fat Brain Toys is a smarter way to play. I'm Debbie Reber, and welcome to Tilt Parenting, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. And this is a Parent Lean-In episode, a bite-sized show where I answer a single listener question, sometimes on my own, sometimes with a coach from the Differently Wired Club, and sometimes with an author or expert who's become one of my go-to resources. Think one relatable parent question followed by practical strategies or reframes that can support you in your parenting world. To submit a question for a future Parent Lean-In show, go to tiltparenting.com/lean-in. That's tiltparenting.com/LEANIN. And with that, here's today's episode. Hey everybody, joining me for today's Parent Lean-In episode is educator and friend of the pod, Zach Morris of Alive at Learn. Zach specializes in working with parents and young adults who are navigating the complex dynamics of neurodivergent experience. Zach is uniquely equipped to serve families with profiles of autism, especially PDA, families navigating trauma, and families needing to heal and repair relationships. He's also a parent coach in my Differently Wired Club. And I just have to say, you have true fans in my club. Your office hour call is the one they're like, I'm not missing that thing. So anyway, I'm so happy to be in conversation with you today for this question. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. That's so nice to hear. And thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's get into this question. So this is another good one that I think comes up in some shape or form with so many families in our community. So this parent wrote, how do I talk with my child and let them know they've been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder? What is the correct way to talk about someone who's autistic, especially when kids in this country use the word autistic to put each other down? So this is a little context. This is a 10-year-old who is comfortable saying that he's neurodivergent. He has ADHD and anxiety and feels comfortable with those. But this parent has recently moved to a new country where autism isn't as well understood or can be used in a negative way. He got reevaluated, and both the psychologist and psychiatrist gave that diagnosis, which feels accurate to the parent. Yet this parent feels nervous to tell him this one more thing about who he is. The parent, I should also add, is also a little concerned about the best way to share this with other people. So a lot in that question. And Zach, I'm going to have you kick us off today. What came up for you when you heard that question?
Yeah, I hear families talk about this a lot, actually, and a lot of different things are coming up for me. The first thing I'm thinking about is just how we talk about autism, right? And what autism is, right? And I love Donna Henderson and Sarah Whalen's work in Is This Autism? And so paraphrasing here, but this is from them, right? And this idea that at its core, it's a different nervous system, right? Like being autistic is just having a different nervous system. And it's, in a nervous system that processes, experiences, and responds to the world differently than other nervous systems, right? And so just sort of really starting to get into this conversation around neurotypes, and they're just being, multiple neurotypes, many neurotypes. And I think especially because kiddo is comfortable with the term neurodivergent, right? It's great that neurodivergent just being that sort of umbrella term, right? For talking about different neurotypes, and one of those neurotypes is autism, right? And the other thing I think about is also with the ADHD, component as well. And so we're really talking autism and ADHD. And at that point we're talking ADHD, right? Kind of unofficially, right? That's kind of like the unofficial term, right? Like, this is me. I'm ADHD, right? And this co-occurrence of autism and ADHD just being so prevalent, actually, right? So this even gives us the opportunity, depending on your kiddo, right, and things like that. There's sort of like this is even other neurotype, right? This like ADHD neurotype of these things combining, right? And so I think if there's comfortability already sort of in some of that land, I don't think it's a big stretch just getting into some of these next pieces, right? And just kind of helping with the reorientation of neurotypes, right? Actually. I also think that identity is so personal, right? And if neurodivergent feels more aligned and comfortable for kiddo, then that's great. That's awesome, right? Like that gets to be, like I don't need to identify as autistic, right? Just because that's what my report in psych eval showed, right? So some of this is also, just even in talking about it, it's sort of sometimes we can talk about what we've seen or experiences and all of that, and then talk about just sort of like the way people talk about that stuff, right? And like, oh, like when all of that's kind of together, some people have like a name for that, right? And like we can kind of get into some of it with that, right? But we can also talk about experience and needs without needing the label, right? So we might just be talking about all the parts that this is sort of illuminated about me, about how I process or what some of my experiences are, or, sensitivities. And we can really get to know all of that without even ever talking about autism, right? Not that I would be trying to keep someone from talking about autism at all, right? Like I definitely see that individuals that can embrace and lean into that, right, are really served by that often, right? But it's also not essential, right? And I think there's ways of also just talking about experience and needs and sensitivities. And so if we're noticing some resistance or sort of apprehension or fear kind of around that as we explore it, we can just table it. We can just talk about the parts of it, the things that it means for me, right? In that way, even if we're talking about it just in my neurodivergence. The last thing I wanted to mention, maybe a couple more pieces, is the grief of being misunderstood by others, right? So when we talk about like autism, being used as like a put down, in this place where they are, I think just really empathizing with this, and really empathizing with this idea of people thinking autism's one thing, but it's really something else, right? And we may need a metaphor to help our kiddo, kind of understand that, oh yeah, like that's a thing that can happen in the world, like not just with autism, right? But with all kinds of things that people might be sort of misinformed, and not using that as therefore we should feel totally okay about this, but more of just the grief. Like actually, therefore it makes sense that like this also maybe feels kind of uncomfortable or feel self-conscious, and just actually empathizing with some of that grief. One last thing as we talk about that piece, right? And talk about like talking to others about this and sharing this with other people. I think just, really trying to remember that everyone's on their own journey of understanding, and remembering that judgment is a tool for protection, right? So that like when I hear someone's judgment, I can also hear their confusion and their fear and their anxiety and their convictions, right? And of course, easier said than done, right? In that moment when I'm hearing judgment, right? That's so hard. But just from that regulated time of myself, like reminding myself that, oh yeah, like judgment is a tool for protection, actually. And like they're just trying to protect themselves, probably way more than they're trying to like tell me what to do exactly, right? And so on the other side of that, really connecting with others who are sharing a journey like this, right? Just, I mean, being connected with Tilt, right? Being connected with people in your life that do get it, so that you can set yourself up for success in being seen and heard and understood. Because, being in this specific world of the world, right? Like this autism world and everything, like I have definitely learned that, like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to help everybody sort of understand this and see it in the way that I'm seeing it. So how am I protecting myself in those moments also too? Like, what do I need, right? In those moments, how am I setting myself up if I know, like, I'm also really sensitive to that. Like, I'm also really sensitive to hearing people's feedback or ideas on what we should be doing instead. And so just getting to know those parts of myself and like in honoring that for myself, that's okay. And that makes sense that I'm super sensitive to that. So maybe it's just going to take me into some different actions or places or things like that.
So good. Let's take a quick break now, and then I have a lot of thoughts based on what you said and a few other things to add. As summer winds down and I kick off a new podcast production season, that means I'm spending many hours prepping for and interviewing guests. I'm finding that the time to shop for and prepare well-balanced meals is slipping through my fingers. That's exactly why I'm so thankful for HelloFresh. HelloFresh can help you save time this fall by making dinner easier and faster than ever. Skip the meal planning and those last-minute grocery store runs with easy-to-follow recipes and pre-portioned ingredients delivered fresh to your door. Just choose your delivery day, open your box, and start cooking. Or, in my case, get your husband to start cooking. HelloFresh also has something for everyone in the family. Their line of kid-friendly options means even the pickiest of eaters will be part of the Clean Plate Club this back-to-school season. And Green Chef, another sponsor of this show, is now owned by HelloFresh. And I love switching between the brands to enjoy an even wider selection of meal plans. And now my listeners can enjoy both brands at a discount with me. And for a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/tiltkids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while your subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/tiltkids. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Uma pausa no seu podcast para contar que chegou o novo Peugeot 2008. Um carro que impressiona até quem já viu de tudo. Conheça uma experiência de puro prazer em dirigir com acabamento sofisticado e design inconfundível. Descubra como conforto e tecnologia podem elevar o nível da sua experiência de direção. Conheça o novo Peugeot 2008 e deixe a inspiração te guiar.
O podcast parou, mas é bem rapidinho, tá? É só pra avisar que o mês Sticks tá chegando ao fim aqui no Pão de Açúcar. Essa é a chance perfeita de trocar seus pontos Sticks por refratários e talheres exclusivos com até 50% off. São vários modelos incríveis, um para cada receita especial com gostinho de felicidade. Corre lá no app do Pão para garantir o seu favorito. Pão de Açúcar, você feliz é tudo de pão.
So just circling back on what you just shared, I love that idea that when it comes to other people, just that reminder that you get to decide who gets to know. And, Margaret Webb, who does these parent lean-in episodes with me and is also part of our Differently Wired Club coach community, she has always said that when it comes to who knows or who gets to know, it's on a need-to-know basis. And so if there are people who it doesn't feel emotionally safe to share, or if we feel as if they're really not going to see or respect who our kids are, they're going to minimize it or say, well, everybody's a little bit on the spectrum or whatever that is, we get to decide who we share that with. And so I think that is really important. So I appreciate you bringing that up. A couple of other things just to add to what you said. So first of all, I love that you highlighted, this child's comfortability with the term neurodivergence. I would definitely kind of lean into that. And what I would do as a parent is really kind of do my own work surrounding the worries that I have. So you ended this question by saying that, I'm really worried about adding one more thing, or that, that this is going to be really hard based on the way that the word autism is used in this country. So it's really important that if we are navigating these conversations with our kids, that we don't bring our own stuff into it, because it'll Our kids will feel it, if we're saying one thing, but we're really energetically or emotionally like conveying something else, they're going to know. It's going to make them feel confused, perhaps not super safe. So it's important to kind of do that work yourself so that you can be at peace with it and you can engage in whatever that conversation or conversations looks like with calmness, with confidence, with knowing, and without really having any negativity or fear attached to that information being shared. So that is just something I would invite you to do. And then one other thing you might do is to think about your intention for why you're sharing the information, whatever that is. So you want to be clear on, I'm sharing this so my child can get the support that he needs. I'm sharing this so my child can have a deeper understanding of himself. I'm sharing this because we are not going to be contributing to reinforcing stigma in our family. It's not a value of ours. I'm sharing, and it could be multiple things, but to go into that, again, conversation with that very clear intention, using that as a guidepost, that will also help you feel a lot more confident. And I keep saying conversation, but really, it's not like you sit down and have this one big conversation. Typically, it's just again, the culture of our family. This is how we talk. We're open about what's going on, and we kind of are always talking about strengths and relative weaknesses and how our brains work and what we need and how our nervous system, all of that stuff. That's part of what I would encourage families to just kind of be talking openly about. But just to reiterate what you shared, Zach, I also love that you said that identity is personal. And, we can't decide how our kids are going to feel. We can't, say ADHD or autism is a superpower over and over again and expect that our kids are going to embrace it as such. So what we can do is be non-judgmental, kind of, again, calm, steady, trusted sources of information, make sure that we're surrounding our kids with people who see and love and respect who they are, and that we're not bringing any kind of weirdness into our dynamic in these dialogues. And ultimately support our kids so they feel confident in deciding, okay, how do I want to use this information? How do I want to feel about it? Do I want it to be part of how I identify or not? Ultimately, it's their decision. So I appreciate that you brought that up. Anything to add before we wrap this one up, Zach?
Yeah, just last piece, just based on some things you were saying, of kind of not projecting some of our own fears, a little bit and worries on this. I think it's what it brought up for me is like the value of also going hard places with our kids, right? And like, it might be a hard to hear message. Like it might start that way and turn out differently, but like it might start as a hard to hear message, but that's not bad, actually, right? Like I think what we see a lot of times is if I can confidently go there with you and like hold space for you in that, I'm actually showing you that this is navigable and we can handle this. If I try to protect you from all of those experiences, I'm kind of indirectly communicating it's too much for you, right? And I think our kids want to feel empowered and they want to feel capable and they want to feel confident, right? And so I think being willing to go those places that are hard for our kids actually shows them that we can get through.
Great point. And a wonderful note to end this on. Thank you. I'm so glad you added that. So we'll wrap this one up then. So I hope whoever submitted that question, and listeners who are navigating this, that this was helpful for you. Thank you for submitting the question. And Zach, thanks as always for talking me through this. I just so appreciate your perspective on this.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. To learn more about the resources mentioned in this Parent Lean In episode, go to the extensive show notes page on tiltparenting.com. To submit a question for a future episode, just go to tiltparenting.com/leanin. That's tiltparenting.com/LEANIN. If you're looking for personal support from me in connection with the phenomenal community of parents raising neurodivergent kids, join us in the recently rebooted Differently Wired Club. The new Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Go to tiltparenting.com/club to learn more. The Tilt Parenting Podcast is hosted by me, Debbie Reber, author of Differently Wired and the founder of Tilt Parenting. To support this show, please join my Patreon campaign where you can set up a small monthly contribution. Just go to patreon.com/tiltparenting to learn more. If you want to follow Tilt on social media, go to @tiltparenting on Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, please take a minute to leave a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps this show stay visible so others can find it more easily. And that's all for this week. Stay safe, stay well, and take good care. And for more information about any of the parenting resources Tilt offers, visit tiltparenting.com.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.